Hello from OG Benchmarks. Do you want to build a computer but don't know where to start? Then this video is for you. You can get your feet wet with an inexpensive starter build and then dive into the deep end for a better PC. Common advice on YouTube for building your first computer goes something like 1. Prepare with a lot of PC build videos. 2. Watch a few more to be sure. 3. Pick your parts. 4. Order your parts. And 5. Build your system. I disagree with this advice. I think there's a better way, and that's what this video is about. Here is my approach. 1. Watch some build videos. 2. Buy some used parts online. 3. Build an open bench computer. 4. Maybe repeat as you learn along the way. 5. Start on your dream computer. You'll hone your skills on used parts before you tackle new high-end components. We'll walk through this approach, and I'll recommend some parts that total about $50, plus your time for the test build. I want this video to be brief, so I won't explain everything fully. Please ask questions in the comments section if you have any. What are the prerequisites? You need about $50 for parts, maybe $75 including tools and accessories. Think of the $50 partly as investment in your education and partly as entertainment. 2. You need a working computer for searches and research. 3. You need peripherals, a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. USB Wi-Fi is optional. 4. You need some humility and willingness to screw up and try again. This guide's goal is a low-cost computer build around Intel's second-generation CPU line. That's Sandy Bridge. You might say, dude, Sandy Bridge is old and sucks. Maybe, but parts are dirt cheap. It's a great start for low-cost learning, and it will be a real functional computer. This will be a test bench, not a gaming rig. You're learning how to troubleshoot so that you can build something better later. Walk before you run. To keep costs to an absolute minimum, our system will only be able to run a Linux OS. I'll make upgrade recommendations at the end if you want a system that can run Windows. Here are the 8 core parts, excluding peripherals, for any computer. We'll walk through each part and I'll recommend what to buy. We won't need a discrete GPU or a case. We'll keep a running total of the costs as we go in the upper right. All the listings I show include shipping, but not taxes. I'm in the US, so prices are in US dollars. First item, the motherboard. I've already said that we are doing a Sandy Bridge build. Consumer Sandy Bridge CPUs take a motherboard with an LGA 1155 socket. Fortunately, there are literally millions of Sandy Bridge computers that have been retired and broken down into parts, which we can buy very cheaply on places like eBay. I am partial to eBay. The prices may not be the lowest, but it is a huge competitive marketplace, and anything mentioned in this guide is available from multiple high-reputation sellers. I'm going with an OEM motherboard. That's a Dell, HP, Acer, Lenovo, etc. Used consumer motherboards tend to sell for $50, even old used ones, but a used Dell motherboard can go for under $15 easy. The disadvantage of buying a used Dell motherboard can be proprietary connectors, as we shall see. Here is my pick, the Dell M5DCD, pulled from an Optiplex 390. It has an LGA 1155 socket with the Sandy Bridge H61 chipset. Whichever board you choose should have a 24-pin power supply connector for compatibility with any ATX power supply. Around the Sandy Bridge era, many OEM computers relied on proprietary power connections, so beware. The board has a standard 4-pin plug for the CPU power. Front panel connections, critical because that's how you turn the system on, are a mess on OEM boards, Dell included. This board has a 5-pin connection, and we'll come back to this later. There are many other OEM Sandy Bridge motherboards from this era that can be used for our purposes, so don't restrict yourself to this exact one. Just buy from a decent seller and make sure the connections are right with some research. How about the power supply? We know we need a 24-pin connector to match the motherboard. We need a 4-pin connector, which goes to the motherboard, but specifically feeds power to the CPU. We will also need a SATA power connector for our storage drive. These are the bare minimum requirements. Wattage is not a concern for this low power build. Here is an HP power supply that fits our needs. It's just 180 watts, but that's plenty for us. We have a 24-pin connector and a 4-pin connector and at least one SATA power connector. One more comment. Note how we are using the pictures to confirm that the connectors are present and match between components. Do not assume that your parts will fit. Instead, assume they will not work together and then convince yourself that they will. This is super important. Question, research, confirm. In this case, if the SATA connector isn't clear, you can always look up the model online and confirm with a better image. How about the CPU? We need a consumer Sandy Bridge CPU. Go on Wikipedia and search Sandy Bridge. You'll find a page that lists loads of CPUs from this generation. All the consumer CPUs, Celeron, Pentium, i3, etc., fit the LGA 1155 socket, which our motherboard has. The good news is that all these CPUs have integrated graphics. So our CPU takes care of two components, both the CPU and the GPU. A weak GPU, but a GPU nonetheless. Here is my CPU pick, is the Pentium G630. Weak? Yes. Fits our budget and will work with our other components? Also yes. I'll admit you could upgrade the CPU for not much money. Just stay within the Sandy Bridge family. We will need a cooler for our CPU. The cooler mounts to the motherboard. Here are the 4 mounting holes for the cooler around the CPU socket. Note there are threads in these holes, and those threads come from a back plate on the motherboard. Normally these back plates are attached with little sticky tape and easy to remove, so you can just pull it off so that the motherboard will accept the stock Intel CPU cooler with the push pin connectors. No threads. Otherwise, leave the plate in place and get an LGA 1155 compatible cooler that has screw mounts. I went with a screw mount cooler as it was the cheapest fit I could find. It includes thermal paste, which we will need. This cooler is fine for our modest purposes, but I would not put this piece of junk in any computer that I want to keep and use seriously. For RAM, we need just one stick of DDR3 1066 RAM. The Wikipedia page for your CPU family will tell you what type of RAM is supported by your CPU. We are using a desktop motherboard, so we need desktop RAM, a UDIMM. Make sure you avoid getting server RAM, same size as desktop RAM, or laptop RAM, smaller DIMMs. Again, stick with experienced, reputable sellers, and they should make everything clear in their listing. Remember, assume it won't work. Make the listing convince you or ask the seller. For this system, I'm only getting one stick of RAM, and it's just 2 GB DDR 1066 desktop RAM. That's all we need. This seller does not promise a specific brand, which is not a concern for us. Finally, storage. We need something small. 8 GB will do. Avoid a hard drive because they are so slow. The SSD will be powered by the SATA power cable on the power supply. I picked the cheapest 8 gig SSD. Not the best price, but it's the bare minimum and will work. Here are our key parts and total costs. The GPU is covered by our CPU, and we're building in an open bench PC, so there's no case. We are under $50. The total includes shipping within the US, but not tax. You'll need a few other things: a SATA data cable, a power cord for our power supply. This 99-cent listing is actually 3 cables, perhaps a bit scary. You will need a video cable from our motherboard to the monitor. Our motherboard has HDMI and VGA out. I opted for an HDMI cable. We will need a USB drive with an ISO of an OS for booting the system and loading the OS onto our SSD. One more item, which is optional, is a 2-pin power switch. Aside from a small Phillips head screwdriver, I think you should have everything you need. One last comment: if you're ordering a motherboard or PSU from a big seller, then ask if they can add a SATA cable or power supply cable, or even a used Intel stock CPU cooler for an extra $1 or so. You know they have piles of those items and may even be willing to include them for a very nominal additional cost, especially if you ask nicely. Once you have everything ordered and in hand, put it together. Here is a picture of a completed open bench build. This is not identical to our parts list, but it's very close. We have the motherboard, the Dell M5DCD, an ATX power supply, also a Dell, a Celeron G630 is hidden under a screw-down CPU cooler, an 8 gig SSD connected to the power supply and motherboard with a data cable, and a single 2 gig stick of RAM. I've also plugged in a power switch cable. Let's talk about this. The motherboard has a 5-pin power switch connector in the upper right next to the RAM slots. Here's a lame diagram of the 5-pin power switch connector. If you plug the 2-pin switch on these 2 pins, then you can turn on/off the system with the power switch. Alternatively, you can bridge these pins with something like a flathead screwdriver. So I have booted this system with a USB drive with the Raspbian OS as an ISO file. Let's walk through some quick screenshots to see what happens once the power is on. Here is the splash screen for the Dell Optiplex 390. This screen is baked into the motherboard. That's kind of fun. Dude, you're getting a Dell. Next is a screen of ominous warnings. The motherboard is complaining about not having all its proprietary connectors. No worries. Let's see what we get if we press the F2 key. From F2, you get to a setup menu, which can include this screen. We are reading our Celeron G630 with 2 gigabytes of RAM. Perfect. If we had hit F1 on the error screen, we continue and boot from the USB drive. And here is the desktop of our Raspbian OS. So this computer now looks like a Raspberry Pi with a Linux-based OS. Everything is working great. I haven't done it, but during boot, one option is to install the OS to the SSD. Let's review the good and bad. This is a real computer. From mostly garbage parts, super satisfying, great educational and entertainment value for just $50. This is not a gaming machine. It's not really even a daily driver, since not Windows. If you installed 4 gigs of RAM and had a 128 gigabyte SSD, then you could run Windows on this thing no problem. I would not put this system into a case because you will have to fight with the proprietary front panel connectors on the motherboard. If you can navigate this build, you are well equipped to build a real system and manage the part selection process. Building in a case is a bit more challenging, but you're ready. Of course, you can always move ahead more slowly and step up to a discarded office PC that you can upgrade to a worthwhile office machine or low-end gamer. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more information about installing the OS, please let me know. Please subscribe, like, or leave a comment. Take care.